Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. We are here for the last round of the TFC Mad Monday series. This one brings us to the Innsbruck KOM Afterparty, and it is 3 laps of the Innsbruck ring, which is relatively flat apart from the big kick for the leg snapper. There is a sprint on each of these 3 laps, and then finally we are going to go up the Innsbruck KOM. So that is 7.4 kilometers, around 6%, and just a big old slog. So as you can see on screen there, you can see the gradient change, and it is quite the heavy duty hill. So let's get on with the race. And here we go, 3, 2, 1, and out of the starting gates. As always appears the case with these Mad Monday races, the pace is quite chilled out and manageable at the start. There's going to be no great split-offs. I think everyone's well aware of what's ahead of them and that it's going to be a long day in the saddle. So let's skip ahead. Let's forward we go through the beautiful streets of Innsbruck, and we take this corner across the bridge, and we're going to turn to the right and into the leg snapper proper. And it may be short, but you can see that it's a nasty 8%. So we put down a little bit of power. We'll try and split this group up and make a selection coming up here. So we're putting down around 5.5 watts a kilo, and you can see that some of the bigger players are coming with us. Martinelli's there, and he's got a teammate as well. One of the cryogen riders is in there, and one of the DBR as well. Starks from the Rhinos is making sure he hangs on there too. Huberig's of TFC has absolutely dropped the hammer. There is a possibility of being able to make it to the line if you get a good enough gap on the leg snapper, because the sprint is about 1 kilometre from the top. But it is it's a long solo effort. I'm not sure if I would fancy that on lap 1. As I say, my intention is not for any of the sprints really. My goal is to win the overall race. I know that no matter what I do in the sprints, I can't catch Martinelli in the overall point standings. So we're just going to let them go, sit in with this group now of about 10. That's, well, if you include the few off the front, the 3 off the front, that's about 10. And we'll stay with that as we get to the sprint. And here we go as we start the sprint point. This is, like I say, it's not a sprint I'm going to be interested in, just roll through this one. But the power is going down. You can see Martinelli just leading off the front. He's got Starks, the Rhino rider, with him as well. And they are hammering on 8 watts a kilo. And then even more than 8 watts a kilo, 8.5 as Martinelli goes through. And it is Martinelli from Italy, Starks from Rhino, and Kirsten from the Hurricanes. And that is the first sprint out of the way. 2 more of them to come before we get on to the climb. They didn't quite set up as much as I had expected, and as much as they have in previous sprints and previous races, so I actually have to put on a little bit of power to catch back on. It was not really what I wanted to do. I thought I could just roll through. They normally drop to about 1 watt per kilo, and we can catch back on, but I was a little bit concerned, so I've had to put out 450 watts just to cruise back into the pack so as not to get dropped off. But we do make it, and we will carry on for the next lap. And here we are, the second time up the leg snapper. This one's a little bit more sedate. Now the chasing group has just managed to catch back on to the main body of the peloton, but they most likely won't last long if they've used all of their energy chasing back on, while the lead group tended to just chill out a little bit. So the large chunk, most of the 28 riders are now back together, but it probably won't last long going up the leg snapper. It's Poirier of the Rhinos putting down about 4.5 as they go and try and open up a little gap. From my perspective though, I just didn't want anyone escaping over the leg snapper, so I'm happy enough just to try and hold around 350 watts, and as long as a group of people aren't shooting off the front, I'm pretty happy. As we can see, it's just the three there, well marked. Starks is there from the Rhinos, Martinelli's here, so that's the three probably biggest rivals, myself, Martinelli and Starks. Although I didn't know it at the time. I think this may be the first time that we've raced against Starks, so he was a bit of a dark horse, but he did really well in that first sprint, so I was keeping my eye on him. So by the time sprint number 2 rolled round at 15.5 k's, I was feeling a bit racy. My legs had warmed up and I decided it was time to depart and try and win this. So we're at 800 watts here, trying to hold around. Martinelli hitting an unbelievable 10 watts a kilo at one point there, and as we push forward it is going to be Starks from me and Martinelli. Now the interesting follow-up to that, as we sat up and everyone else came back to us, there was a big move off the front by Poirier of the Rhino racing team, and he started to put down, not a massive amount of power. It was not like a sprint and away, but just a steady sort of 2.8, 2.9, 3 watts a kilo, and they would pull out quite the gap as everyone sat up and let them go. And as we move along a little bit more, you can see that also heading up the road was Eddie E of the Wahoo Le Col team and Kirsten of Team TFC. They would start trying to open a gap up as well and chase down Poirier. And again, I just felt that, still a long way to go, almost 20k. Didn't warrant chasing this one down. And as we come forward again, this is the move that we missed. You can see Starks from the Rhino, 6.5 watts a kilo. He's putting on a sprint to get up the road. And I've sat there and thought about it and said, nah, it's all going to come back. This is wasted energy. And, well, boy, was I wrong in that one. Could not be more wrong. Got to the front, kind of hoping that other people would come and work with me, as the gap was bridged, so there was now 3 groups on the road. There was Poirier 15 seconds ahead, then Eddie, Kirsten and Starks were in the second group, and then back to the third group with me, Martinelli, True Nielsen and Ali from Cryogen, and that was it really, another 17 seconds back. But this was the main group here. And on to the leg snapper for the final time. You can see it's Martinelli that starts hammering out the big watts at 5.5, 6. To me, this was pretty much all said and done. There was no point in trying to go for the sprints. But Martinelli dropped the hammer. He's still very interested in the sprint points. I was wondering if I could catch 19 seconds on the hill. 38 to Poirier of the Rhinos seemed like a bit too big an ask to close down on the KOM. But 20 seconds to the guys in the second group, that seemed manageable, and it was still a big ask for Poirier to hold those kind of watts all the way there, so maybe we could catch them. But by now, Martinelli was also almost making contact with that group of 3, but they would pull away slightly on the downhill, and I just don't think he was quite able to hold the required watts and couldn't quite close that last 3 seconds, and so he was just left sort of in no man's land. So on to the last sprint, such as it was. And that one was a rollover for Poirier of the Rhinos. Into second was Starks, and in third place for Kirsten from TFC. So great move from the Rhinos, getting 2 up there and taking those points. We have just caught up to Martinelli, and now it's just round the course and up the KOM. So Martinelli and I starting to pull away, and then the message comes up: "You go, I'll pull till the hill." And true enough, he would drag me back. As you can see, the gap was, so we got 19 seconds to the chase group, 25 to Poirier of the Rhinos. Martinelli, word has it that he is not the world's best climber. Punchy for sure, but you can see the power he could put out on the leg snapper and things like that. But a long sustained climb, I don't think he fancied it, and he would drag me up towards the main group. And this was the moment that Martinelli pulled off. Domestique duties done for the day. The gap down to just 12 seconds to Starks from the Rhinos, and 19 seconds to the lead Rhino, Poirier. So knowing that we're going to have to push on now to try and catch them, we're just going to try and hold a steady sort of 3.5 watts a kilo just to try and close this gap down. And as you can see through the fast forward, we have indeed closed down, but it was a big effort to get back on. You can see Poirier's job done. She's pulled off, or he's pulled off. Stephanie, I'm not sure. They have pulled off, and that left really just the three of us then. Eddie from WLC, Wahoo Lacol, Starks from the Rhinos, and me. And as you can see, I've already hammered out a massive effort, and don't really fancy it, I guess. But we're going to try and stick with the WLC rider, Eddie. He's got a little bit of a gap, but it's a long way to go. Let's put this hill on fast forward. And at the early stages of the hill, you can see that Eddie was very quickly reeled in. He would try little sprints here and there to get away, but again, just reeled in, try and keep in the constant power around 300 watts, and just try to grind up the massive hill. And the gap would start to open, would get up to around 7 or 8 seconds here on the lower slopes. So let us move a little bit further forward and see if that gap kept opening. And indeed it did. You can see it got up to around 25, 26 seconds, holding quite steady. But this one was a real struggle. There's a severe amount of suffering going on. At this point, only 3.5 Ks to go, and the gap still around 30 seconds. Then 1 minute and 5 back to Kirsten, and 1:20 back to AH from the TFCs. So we carry on pushing up the hill, and let's get closer to the top. And the gap opened ever further. It's now 50 seconds, but he's putting in some big efforts. And my legs are really starting to feel the burn at this point. The gap's starting to reduce now, 45 seconds, 40 seconds, and it just keeps on coming down. But we're in the final kilometre, and this one is almost over. 37 was the gap here. As we ease up, we grab the shirt goes back on, and we approach the last 150 metres to the line. You have to display the team shirt for the victory pose. By this point, the legs have absolutely given up. Somehow on the hill, I managed to eat a banana to try and get any remaining strength, and that has helped. But at this point, the victory is in the bag. Eddie hammering on. I don't know how he's got the ability to put out 6 watts a kilo on the final sprint, but good for him. But we'll take the victory across the line, and boy did that one hurt. And here are the final results. You can see that once the results themselves have been edited, that Eddie has been disqualified for breaking the power limits there. We were right on the button. But it's a victory for me. Then Kirsten in second for the TFC team, and Starks in third for the Rhinos. So great results for Rhinos, taking third and fifth place. And overall, yeah, fairly happy. fairly happy. This series is now over. We'll be on to the next series, which actually starts next week, because there truly is no rest for my poor legs. So if you like this, if you can subscribe and share, and I will see you all next time.